Hello, welcome again to Sport Unlocked. And if you hit subscribe or follow wherever you're listening to us from, we land in your feeds automatically to listen to new podcasts with Martyn Ziegler from The Times, Tariq Panja from The New York Times, and myself, Rob Harris from Sky News. Well, Tariq, you've been in Lausanne this week at the International Olympic Committee. Hopefully, in another episode, we'll get to talk a bit more about some of the candidates running to be IOC president. But in Lausanne, a chance to encounter the FIFA president. You see Gianni Infantino there?
The only people I saw from FIFA at Lausanne, I missed Gianni Infantino, but I did see the guy who does his Instagram and a media officer. So it's interesting that the people who travel with Gianni Infantino.
Well, I mean, maybe it's his way of uniting the world through social media. I think he'd also posted before that about going to Rome and meeting Elon Musk's brother Kimball and Matteo Salvini, the Deputy Prime Minister of Italy. Bit of a controversial far-right figure, but he presented them with their personal printed pennants. I don't know, is this sort of flirting with Trump-style politicians going to continue?
He's certainly ingratiating himself with that world, not only the politicians, also Elon Musk, as we've spoken about, Dana White and others, very much part of that MAGA world now.
He's not hiding who he's meeting, at least some of the people that he's there.
You mentioned Dana White, the UFC president. It has been another week of controversy in his world of MMA. One of the fighters making homophobic, transphobic and anti-Semitic comments. This in the week of Holocaust Memorial Day, something intriguingly not mentioned at all, it would seem, by sports bodies like FIFA on social media. But this fighter, Bryce Mitchell, his comments have been condemned by Dana White, but there's no zero tolerance because he is free to fight on. And it does seem to reinforce how UFC can sink to these lows, but it lacks that regulation because it runs itself. There's no external watchdog at all.
Well, it's just incredible, isn't it? UFC is such a sort of strange place that you almost think people are doing it just to get attention.
Well, this will cause offence, so just a warning. This is what Bryce Mitchell had to say.
I honestly think that Hitler was a good guy. He was a guy to go fishing with.
Just a very small fragment of what he said on a podcast. It was highly offensive throughout the comments, anti-Semitic, transphobic and homophobic. And there was condemnation from the UFC boss, Dana White.
I've heard a lot of dumb, ignorant shit in my day, but this one's probably the worst. When you talk about Hitler, he was responsible for the death of 6 million Jews, and he tried to completely eliminate a race of people. World War II was the deadliest war in history. 15 million military deaths, 45 million civilians, and 25 million soldiers were killed in World War II. Second of all, Hitler is one of the most disgusting and evil human beings to ever walk the face of the earth. And anyone that even tries to take an opposing position is a moron. That's the problem with the internet and social media. You provide a platform for a lot of dumb, ignorant people.
Strong condemnation there from Dana White. But this is what unfolded during the media questioning in the news conference.
Does Bryce Mitchell face a punishment from the UFC for saying
That's what everybody wants to hear about punishments. Free speech. I don't have to love it. You don't have to love it. You know.
I agree with that, the free speech sentiment. Is there a concern, though, right, if he goes out and wins a fight and gets a mic?
Well, that's the beautiful thing about this business. For all of you that hate Bryce Mitchell, you get to see him hopefully get his ass whooped on global television. I mean, what do you want me to say about it?
So some criticism there from Dana White, but no intention of dropping him from UFC, the fighter.
No, and I guess that's the environment, the permissive environment that White has created. You know, it's not the first controversial rant a UFC fighter has gone on. I dare say it will be the last. This is the kind of center of the so-called manosphere. All of those guys who are focusing on the likes of Trump and Musk and this kind of ultra-masculine environment. UFC seems to be a bit of an epicenter for all of this, and there doesn't seem to be a limit. Yeah, he's called him out, but this guy, they haven't pulled him from the sport itself. It might just be on brand.
At least there was a chance to ask Dana White about this, something we don't always see in sport, where the leaders face questioning, particularly at a time of difficult issues in the sport, but certainly a lot of condemnation about this permissive free speech environment that he is encouraging. And maybe it also reflects the wider culture. Dana White's on the board now at Meta, which of course the owner of Facebook and Instagram, and deep concern among athletes about the racist abuse on those platforms, on X, owned by Elon Musk, of course, another person in that Trump orbit as well. And so many footballers complaining about that abuse. And Gianni Infantino has a chance, while encountering the likes of Musk and Dana White, to bring that up. Obviously, something intrigued to know if he does. We'll keep a track to see just what happens in UFC. No sign of them wanting to ban a fighter despite being so openly racist, homophobic and transphobic. And Dana White is dismissing as stupid. Some would say highly dangerous, particularly with those views. We've talked often on this podcast about one of Gianni Infantino's big critics, Lisa Klaveness, the president of the Norwegian Football Federation. Well, while she's been very critical of the FIFA governance, there are now questions about how Norwegian football is being run, because VAR is being opposed by the clubs. They want it having no part in the game at all. But Klaveness and her leadership at the Norwegian FA does want it. So there's quite a divide there, with Klaveness going against the clubs.
Yeah, so the clubs voted a majority that they should get rid of VAR at some point in the future. But they left themselves some wriggle room, not to say from the new season, which starts later this year. So that's one thing. But the Norwegian FA have voted unanimously, the directors, the board, to keep it. And then this is going to go to a vote at what's called Norway's Football Parliament on March the 1st. So it's a very divisive topic in Norway, as it is everywhere else. But strange that the FA didn't follow the clubs, do you think?
Has she explained why her board, her FA, have gone in a different direction?
Not particularly. But there hasn't been. I think there's been a statement, but I think it's certainly caused some controversy within Norwegian football, that's for sure.
At least Klaveness saying, despite strong arguments in favour of abolishing VAR, in particular opposition from the elite clubs, the governing body unanimously concluded that the best thing for Norwegian football is to maintain and develop it. How do you feel if FIFA did something like this?
Yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, I think one issue is this TV deals, isn't it? Is that the TV companies like it and want it, and it could affect the value and contracts of TV deals if it was scrapped.
Well, a few weeks until that season does start in Norway. We've just reached the end of the new Champions League, new league phase, which did see 18 games simultaneously being played to complete it. A lot of drama, a lot of action. Some people saying it was too complicated, that you had to work out formulas too much about who was up, who was down. I think it shows it was quite lively and exciting, particularly if you didn't have a team you were supporting.
Yeah, I thought the old format, the group format, had got very stale, and it definitely needed a change. I asked the Scott Young from TNT Sports, who have the rights in the UK, what they thought of the new format, and he was non-committal. He said, let's wait and see at the end of the season. So I wonder if it was a struggle initially, I think, perhaps in terms of viewers, that people understanding it, because it is quite complicated. But I think the view numbers have been much more successful towards the end of this group phase, certainly in the UK.
Do you think it just there could be more tweaks to come as well? I think in terms of that last night, it could be set up as a very exciting moment, and could be made even more exciting. I don't think they'll do this, but if there's just a one-match playoff for the teams that don't automatically qualify, that would mean that there's jeopardy in every single game to finish in that as a top seed, have home advantage for that one game, and you get to the Champions League knockouts that way. The UEFA have done this before. We've seen this with the Nations League in terms of qualifying for the Euros and the World Cup and things like that, where you get home advantage and then you're playing for everything. I thought it was missing some of that. drama and tension in that chaotic night of goals.
Yeah, providing less of a safety net in the playoff round. It is hard to form a definitive verdict. We've only had 1 year of this format. And at the start of the league phase, many teams probably didn't realise the implications of losing, but we saw how some of those big teams nearly put their status in the competition in jeopardy by perhaps then not getting the results they wanted early on. One thing I would do is make finishing top of the league phase mean something. So perhaps it could qualify you automatically into the competition next season. Most of the teams you think you would finish in that place would do so, but it might give a greater incentive to push for it, or secure one of those Club World Cup places that don't go to the Champions League winners ultimately. It would just give that sort of extra determination. Liverpool did put out a slightly weakened team to rest players. They still managed to finish top, but if there was that added incentive to finish in first place, it would give it more to play for on the final day.
Well, it's just like the 24-hour Olympics. All these great ideas are going to be adopted, 3 years' time. We'll be talking about it, how Sport Unlocked podcast produce these ideas. There is the Liverpool, they from finishing top, you get kept apart from the second, the team that finishes second, don't you? And you won't play the third or fourth teams until the semi-finals at the earliest. So there is something, but you're right, it could be even better for finishing top.
But just in terms of the jeopardy, what was clear is now we're at the point we are. None of the big teams did get knocked out. So there was all that, Man City, will they, won't they? Home tie with Bruges or Brugge, depending on which part of Belgium you're in. They made it through though, didn't they, in the end? So I suppose UEFA got their cake and ate it there. They got their jeopardy, a bit of drama, and they've got a big team through.
A lot more football obviously taking place this season with the expanded league phase. Something that has been concerning FIFPRO generally around the world, although they've not been as critical of the Champions League. FIFA have been in their sights more, but the new president of FIFPRO has been at FIFA HQ in Zurich this week, meeting Gianni Infantino. It was the first meeting since the legal challenge filed by FIFPRO with the European Commission, alleging abuse of dominance, particularly over this new expanded Club World Cup.
It's quite an important meeting, I think, because if FIFPRO taking FIFA to court, so actually the two top people meeting is quite important.
It's all about the health of players. This week I was at a High Court hearing in London where the Football Association and other football bodies are being sued by former players, claiming that the game damaged their brains in terms of concussions, repetitive heading, and this seems to be really consequential for the whole health of the football industry and players.
We were talking about the other week, weren't we, saying that this has really been focused on the UK, isn't it, so far? But you're right, it is going to be potentially a big challenge for the whole world.
It's all centred now around who needs to provide which documentation. The Football Association saying that it's too wide a scope. They haven't been told to narrow down what they're meant to look for. If there's documents from, say, 60, 70, 80 years ago that shows that they knew about the dangers of heading and didn't do anything about it, they haven't had those requests, they say, yet. But also, they're pretty busy with the football season, which did not go down well with the players' legal team, saying it's not like the executives are involved in those matches on the pitch. The Football Association's barrister did acknowledge that there are always going to be risks in sport, but there are health benefits from playing football. So that's one to keep following.
Another thing to keep following is which new countries are going to join FIFA. There is already 211 members, maybe another one trying to join, maybe not FIFA, but a Football Confederation.
Greenland, been in the news for various reasons. They want to join CONCACAF, which covers North America, Central America, and the Caribbean, and they're going for talks in Miami. My understanding is I think it's a very tall order, which means that I was quite looking forward to sort of Barbados playing against Greenland in World Cup qualifiers, but I think it's going to be a struggle. But on the other hand, there might be a backdoor route. Donald Trump invades, Greenland could become part of US soccer.
Maybe they'll host games in the 2026 World Cup.
The president of the Greenland FA, Kenneth Kleist, he said the invitation to talks is not related to the current geopolitical interests in Greenland, but being able to play international matches would mean an awful lot to the country.
And nothing with UEFA in your reporting there?
Well, I think UEFA already turned them down, haven't they? They tried to get into UEFA a few years ago. and UEFA rejected them. So, yeah, they're just begging for someone to come in and take them over.
Maybe episode one day from Greenland. We need to check the listening numbers from there. If you're in Greenland, hit subscribe and we'll land in your feeds automatically. But for now, thank you for listening. Goodbye.